Hello and welcome to PRSay, S-A-Y. Yes, this is the PRSay Houston chapter podcast where we get to know our members and we get to connect. So for those of you who haven't been able to make it to our networking events, joining us on PRSay is a great way to get to know more members. And I'm your host, Veronica Sopher, with Veronica v. Sopher Public Relations, a PRSay Houston chapter member. And it's an honor to bring this podcast to you. We're going to introduce you to various members that we have so that you can build that network and really grow and get involved in the profession, get involved in our chapter, and really start connecting with folks and making authentic relationships. So that's what we're about here at PRSay. If you are listening on the podcast, make sure you hit subscribe. We don't want you to miss any episodes when they drop. And if you're connecting with us on YouTube or any of our also, we're up on Facebook and LinkedIn. Make sure you let us know where you are tuning in from. And if you catch the replay, #replay, so that my guests and I can go back and connect with you. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open the show and introduce our guest. We have Catherine Burch Graham joining us. She's a member of our Houston chapter. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you, Veronica. This is a real pleasure for me.
Oh, excellent. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. Our members want to get to know you.
Well, thanks for asking. It's funny. The first thing that comes to mind when I think about, tell me about yourself, I really think about the good fortune and the blessings that I've had over the past 3 decades to within the comm field, within communications, because one of the things about our field that's just so cool is how easily we can transition into a different aspect of it.
Right.
So I graduated from UT Austin and went into broadcast journalism, and I had the privilege to work for CNN. Mm-hmm. Getting that front row seat on network journalism was, amazing experience from the standpoint of eventually going into PR, mm-hmm. which I did. Shortly thereafter in San Antonio. And, I'm kind of a cheerleader at heart, especially when it comes to cause-related organizations.
Sure.
And, PR was my truer calling. It really was. And along the way, I mentored students, I mentored new professionals, and found that I absolutely adored giving presentations at universities. And so that led to the great fortune to becoming a full-time instructor at University of Houston. And I'm now serving as an adjunct at Lamar in Beaumont. Founded a freelance writing business about 12 years ago, and I recently got a master's degree. So things are really happening for me now, and yet I'm 3 decades in, and it's really the most exciting time of my career.
Oh, that's so exciting. Well, kudos to you. We call that seasoned. You're a seasoned professional. Don't let anyone tell you differently. The experience that you bring to the table for our members is fantastic. So how did you get involved in PRSay?
It's a great story. When I transitioned into public relations, I found a job in which it was mainly media relations. And we know there are a lot of former broadcast and former journalists who make the switch into public relations because we know how to work with the media effectively because we were them.
Right.
So I realized very quickly that PR was a small part of it was media relations, and most of it was other things.
Right.
So I thought I got to get a mentor. I've got to get some experience. I took an intro to PR class at San Antonio College, and I joined PRSay. I was so fortunate that I found a mentor in one of the leading PR guys there in SA, the late Jim Harford. Mm-hmm. And he was passionate about PR, and he made a very distinct difference between it and marketing. And it was really my good fortune that he took me under his wing. And now, it's funny when I do so much mentoring and I work with new professionals, I think about his example to me. And I really think deep down, it's sort of what he taught me is to pay it forward.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be happier doing really what I do.
Yeah. Well, we're so blessed to have you and to mentor our members. Give us some advice that you would share with people you're mentoring, maybe something you'd share with a young PR professional when they come visit our chapter.
Well, it's no surprise that I'm going to heavily emphasize networking.
Yeah.
Networking is the name of the game. As I tell my students, not only for professional development, but for jobs.
Yeah.
Students always want to hear about that because they're scared, senior year, and they're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get a job? Because they know the competition is tough. And I tell them, standing out, a lot of it is networking. Second, I emphasize the importance of being adaptable. It's considered a soft skill, but a lot about what we do technically can be taught, right?
Sure.
But adaptability and teamwork and those kind of soft skills are absolutely critical. Part of it is communication. Communications, as we know, is an ever evolving field. When I think about the changes since when I started to now, another reason, frankly, I'm glad I got the master's recently, because now I can speak the language of 2022 and not 1989.
Yeah.
So, and I guess the last thing is that I'm a real big believer in let's learn from our seasoned professionals. And that's not a pat on my back. That's a pat on the back of anybody who has more or different experience from me. It can be someone 20 years younger. Because learning from people and listening and really, really hearing them is so important. It's more important than getting out what we need to say.
Right.
I try to remember that now. I learn from my students each and every day.
That's fantastic. That's wonderful advice. So as we start to wrap up, before we go, I want to find out what you're passionate about. If you were at a in-person networking event for our chapter, what are some of the things you'd be sharing?
Well, I think that the biggest single benefit of our profession and of people in our profession is a real openness to change. We get that things are changing all the time. And as we know, there's so many people out there who hate change. Well, most PR folks then are the ones who really need to push the importance of all viewpoints.
Yes.
Different types of people having a seat at the table. And I got to be candid. Most of this, I hope, is because it's the right thing to do. But some of it is self-interest.
Right.
We need to appeal to larger audiences, right?
Absolutely.
And the audience is changing. Sorry to interrupt. But in my view, we really can play a valuable role in that, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It seems popular now, but I've been preaching this for a very long time. And as a mother with a son with disabilities, I'm particularly keen to focus on this marginalized group. 1 in 4 Americans could claim or is considered having a disability. 1 in 4.
Wow. Okay.
So if we're not including them, 1, we're missing a broad swath of the population, and 2, we're not doing right by people.
Yeah.
So I sounds a little preachy. I'll be candid.
Here. Absolutely. Yeah, we're absolutely, we're charged with the responsibility of helping to shape narratives. And that's one that is very important. So Catherine, I think you are doing the work. And we are lucky to have you as a member. Do you have any parting remarks you'd like to add?
I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. And I really, really want to hand it to our chapter. I've been in this chapter for 25 years, and the things that we're doing now in this podcast, thank you. Thanks for doing it. Thanks for hosting it, because again, we're going to be able to get out to a larger audience. And I'm just, I'm only getting started, and I'm so glad to be a part of this group.
Excellent. All right. Well, guys, if you're listening on the podcast, there is some information on the screen. and it's Connect with Catherine Burch Graham on LinkedIn. It will also be in the show notes. And if you're watching the video on one of our platforms, make sure you go and connect with Catherine. She definitely wants to hear from our members and get to know people. So thank you, Catherine, for your time. It's been wonderful having you on the show.
Thanks, Veronica. I appreciate it.
And with that, we are wrapping up our episode of PRSay, the Houston chapter podcast, where we connect with members, get to know each other, build our network, and really just stay connected with folks. Make sure you connect with us on the podcast by hitting subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. And if you're watching the video on any of our social media platforms, let us know you're here so Catherine and I can go back and connect. And with that, we will wrap up this episode of PRSay.